This is a show where theater teachers and professionals share their passions for theater trends, share practical advice and tips, and ask questions of some of theater's most innovative collaborators. I'm Nick Cusimano, one of the co-hosts of TheatreCast, and joining me, as always, is my partner in crime, Danielle Files.
Greetings from Ohio, everybody.
And we have a special guest, and we've kind of titled this podcast today, "The Force Awakens," and he even has his The Force Awakens
Force
T-shirt
Awakens
on
T-shirt.
today.
That's true. That's true.
We're kind of talking about ways of using Star Wars in the classroom. I also have a Star Wars T-shirt on, not as cool or current as Adam, but Adam Watson's going to join us, and we'll let him introduce himself and uh, have him tell us what his day job is when he is not a Jedi.
True. True. Yes, Jedi is sometimes a full-time job in itself. But my other full-time job is I'm the digital learning coordinator for Shelby County Public Schools, and I am coming and talking to you from just outside of Louisville, Kentucky. So I'm very honored and grateful to be here. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you again for joining us. And Danielle, can you tell us the story of how you got to meet Adam?
Well, yes, it was in school, and I have to first just say that two things. Number one, this may be our most deeply nerdy show on like 8 different levels. Like it's going educational nerdy, it's going ed tech nerdy, and then there's the whole Star Wars icing on the cake. So I just want
Excellent.
to point that out to everybody. And that I am not wearing any Star Wars garb because Star Wars is in my heart. Wow.
Good point.
So we met at the Kentucky Bluegrass Google Summit that was put on by EdTech Team. Hi, EdTech Team. And we bonded over Star Wars, really, right? That was
We
what
did.
kind of brought us together. Adam was presenting there. If I recall, you're presenting your Chromebook one-to-one program at your school. You were presenting about that. Is that right?
That is correct, because we just
Yeah.
started that in Shelby County. The rollout began with our high school, so that's where we're at. But absolutely. You are
And
on spot.
and if I recall, I think there were two Google Forms sessions going on simultaneously, right? And
Mhm.
one was Jeff
Mhm.
Hiles' Game of Forms. Very clever, Jeff. But it paled in
Yes.
comparison to mine, which was the Jedi Master form, Jedi Master.
Because you're
So
as I told Danielle that day, yeah, your moniker drew me in. That was clever name calling because I had to choose. Love Game of Thrones.
I
Really
do
love
too.
Star Wars,
I do
so I
too.
came to
And
you.
I
Yeah.
was a little nervous because Jeff is Jeff, and he was the keynote speaker. I'm like, who's gonna come to my regular session? But there were lots of Star Wars people. As one of the participants said, I didn't want to be beheaded.
Right.
So
Very good point.
and then everybody else had a lot of people in our session had Star Wars garb on, and it was a really fun group of people. And so then we ended up chit-chatting and hanging out, and he said mumbled something about theater and Star Wars in the classroom, and I um, immediately tranquilized him and dragged him into TheatreCast.
And I just now woke up. That was like 2 months ago. So that's I shaved really
Awkward for
quick
his
and then I went
family.
online.
Yeah.
Right. It was a little awkward, but hey,
And
hibernation.
we'll.
I suffered from hibernation sickness, is what I did really. I couldn't see for a while,
Yeah.
and then it was like I stabbed someone and the jetpack flew off, and then I got here. So it's awesome. I'm good. I'm all good now.
Yeah, so my promise of deep nerd syndrome has already come
Just
true.
already
Already
started.
Yes.
Boba Fett reference.
But
Already.
I am super excited. I went home and looked at the resources that Adam shared, and I mean, my gosh, you do need to hibernate because looking at this, I don't think you ever sleep. Um, your website, your Star Wars in the Classroom website is awesome and so fun and super timely right now. Uh,
Well, thank
I
you.
can't wait for you to tell us how you came up with all of this. And then you also have a whole theater background. which is even more exciting. So we're gonna have to squeeze all this awesome into one session somehow.
I would love to. Would you like me to talk about Star Wars in the classroom?
Yeah.
Or you want to talk about, okay. Well, first off, I have to say, in fairness and in full disclosure, the website is a creation of Thomas Riddle and Wes Dodgens, and I'm very thankful for those guys. In many ways, because of them, it allowed me to expand and put a lot of material there. So let me put that out there first. Well, let me start with the fact that what led me to that is I was a high school English teacher for 9 years before I went into my current position in Shelby County Public Schools, where I help teachers with technology in more of a district administrative role. So for 9 years of high school English, I also taught drama, and again, we can sidestep that for a second, but I was a drama teacher and a playwright director at the high schools for a couple of years there. The thing that I've loved since childhood, of course, is Star Wars, and I've found little ways to incorporate that and put elements of that into the classroom. But one day I'm with my daughter, my oldest daughter, Ayla. We're at Barnes & Noble, we're looking for a book for her, and she says, "Hey, Daddy, there's this book, something about Star Wars." I look down, and it's Ian Desher's first book of the series called William Shakespeare, Star Wars. And that was like bullet or lightning bolt kind of experience. Whoa, like William Shakespeare, Star Wars. And that was such a clever hook that, to be honest, if the book had been awful, I would have been like, that's just clever, that was just funny. But I got the book, I read it, and almost in a sitting, and I was just so taken because Ian, very, very talented. It could have easily been a premise that would have been clever but just screwed up. Instead, he was awesome. He was faithful to iambic pentameter in the book. And the whole concept of the book, I recommend to read it if you haven't had a chance, is the first Star Wars movie. Pretend as if William Shakespeare had to write it for the Elizabethan stage directions and all, in iambic pentameter with the entrances and exits and dramatic soliloquies, and it's great. Great book. And it became something that became a whole series. He's written now, actually, all 6 current Star Wars movies. He's all adapted each of them in this Shakespearean language, and they're all out and published now. So when I read that book, I thought, this is exciting. How can I bring it to the classroom? I got a grant where I could buy class sets of the book to bring into the classroom. When I did that, I thought, I can do this, I can do that. I did a thing where I did an activity, for example, where we took a regular piece of paper and made it an iambic lightsaber. We rolled it up. They decorated it. We rolled it up. They taped it, and the kids did the up down, so unstressed, stressed, with the lightsaber, kind of conducting as if I was John Williams in front of the classroom, trying to learn the stressed. Activities like that. Obviously there was some dramatic reading of some passages and stuff as well, and just talking about what happens when the language gets transformed. And on the academic side, what was exciting was I was trying to find a different way, because I've been, of course, taught Shakespeare for years in a classroom setting, to teach Shakespeare in a way before I got to the quote-unquote real Shakespeare. How could you get excited about the language and not feel like it's just obscure? When it's something where the content, you're not like, what the plot is, because Star Wars is fairly familiar, the characters and so on. They could just kind of absorb and understand and dissect the language itself. So that was the academic purpose, and that led up to Romeo and Juliet, where we read that play. So don't worry, Shakespeare fans, we did get to actual Shakespeare. But anyway, from that opportunity and experience, a couple of neat things came out of it. Ian Desher, the author of the book, we actually did a Skype session where he talked to my freshman English class, which was awesome, and it was very generous of him. We got to do a Q&A session with him and ask some great questions. And then ultimately, when I had all this material for the academic unit, now I'm about to put a bow on it here, I was like, well, I have all this material, what can I do with it? And it just so happened that I stumbled from a Google search, Star Wars in the Classroom, run by Wes and Thomas. So I said to them, look, I don't see something that would necessarily automatically fit. Is there a place that you might be willing to put on the website? And they said, well, you know what? There's this thing called the Rogue Initiative that we're about to start, where we're basically connecting up teachers that are also other educators that use Star Wars in the classroom. And when we do that, we'd love for you and your academic unit, to be on our site. I said, great. And so in the end, I ended up becoming the first Rogue. I am Rogue One.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Which is very exciting. You're up to almost 300 educators around the world.
Sort of like Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
You're
yes, a little bit like the Obi-Wan. So from that's definitely opened doors. They even did an article in Star Wars Insider, which I just so happen to have right here, The Star Wars Insider, written by Dan Zier, who's another guy. He does a podcast called Coffee with Kenobi. Great guy. He does some blogging for StarWars.com. He wrote an article about Star Wars and education. He was also kind enough to mention my academic unit as well. So that is definitely a great melding. It was a great melding of Star Wars as a passion of mine, a love of mine, and education and technology and all that kind of fun stuff. It was a great blend.
And I'm going to guess that the kids really responded to it, that your students were into it.
They did. On the most part, they did really well. They some were, that was one of their favorite units. Some, teenagers are teenagers, so they can't do some things without a little bit of eye rolling and a little bit, but they got into it. It was really great. And here's the thing I think is true for all those that are out there that it's hard to believe you wouldn't have some love of Star Wars in your heart. But there are people. Maybe like Star Trek or something. But the point is that whatever passion you have as an educator, put that in your classroom, because I was so obvious, blindingly, on my sleeve about the fact of how much I love Star Wars from the posters and references, and the students knew that. So if anything, some of the ones that may have not really cared a hoot about Star Wars as far as the film or the franchise, they knew it was something I loved so much that they kind of went into it for me, and because they knew that how much it meant to me. And having that relationship with the students to be able to be like, hey, if nothing else, we'll do it for Mr. Watson kind of thing was great. So it was a great experience.
It sounds like a blast. I would want to see it on stage.
I'm sure some have tried and some will. Yeah, it would be interesting to see some of that officially, on Broadway or something like that. But anyway.
I'm teaching right now a Shakespeare. I'm calling it Shakespeare on its feet for my upper schoolers, and we're looking at Shakespeare not as a sit-down literary experience, which is usually what it ends up being in the classroom, but as a blueprint for action, which is really what it was meant to be. And my wheels are turning. I may have, while you were talking, added the book to my wish list.
Just maybe. Excellent.
Not that I wasn't listening intently.
Understand.
And I think that's a great introduction to helping prepare for the Shakespearean language, because iambic pentameter is such it can be a roadblock sometimes, but if you have that story that so many of them are familiar with, I know my 9-year-old son's very familiar with. I can't wait for the next one.
Of course.
And we have all the Lego Star Wars games and all those other different things. So, so you have to, okay, here's what's happening plot-wise. They already know that, so they can explore the language in a fun and exciting way, and they already know what's going to happen, so they don't have to get stuck with what's happening plot-wise in here.
Translating, yeah. What I like about it, the idea that you're bringing about with all of the people around you, this community of rogues who have done this. But what I like about it is so often with Shakespeare, when we're teaching in the classroom, we're using No Fear Shakespeare and Spark Notes and annotations to take the original text and break it down. And like Nick says, we're battling a duality of challenges in that we're challenged by the language itself and then challenged by the plot itself. I like this sort of backward design that you guys have come up with of taking something we're familiar with and unpacking it from the other end. So imposing the language on it instead of battling both of those at the same time. I really like that. And I also like and imagine it must give students a profound appreciation of the language. Just having to write a few lines of iambic pentameter is a challenge, and to be able to do that for a while and then realize this guy wrote how many poems and 37 plays all in iambic pentameter. He's an alien or Jedi.
He's an alien. He's an alien Jedi. Yeah, that was interesting. I actually had one of the things that the students did was they could do it as a tweet, or they could do it by hand, by paper. But to write a line of iambic pentameter, and it was interesting because that, to hit those beats, much less to say something of significance, that was a challenge. So yeah, you really identify. One thing I should say, and this isn't much of a spoiler, but what Ian Dusher does, that's really brilliant, especially in the first one, that's a surprise, is that R2D2, the way he talks in the book, he talks in his bleeps and his bloops, but it's iambic pentameter bleeps and bloops. So he'll have a line of dialogue, 8 beats of it, of the bleep bloop be doop boop boop kind of stuff. And but what R2 does is he's kind of the wise fool, because when no one else is listening and he can have a moment of soliloquy, he reveals, and he speaks, of course, in brilliant Elizabethan English, So he's not just a bleep bloop guy. He's a guy who has all these, observing around him, and he's like all these fools kind of thing. It's just one of many moments throughout, the books that the author really does a great job with that. And I should say, and it was kind of implied, but I want to make sure it's out there, that the website itself is starwarsintheclassroom.com. So that's the website that has all this material, other things from other rogues that have contributed and things that Wes and Thomas have done. My particular part of the website is searchable and you can find me, but I have a bit.ly. It's bit.ly/rogue1, and that's spelled out ROGUEONE. So anyway, you can you can either Google it and find it online, William Shakespeare, Star Wars, Watson, but multiple ways. You can get to the academic unit and see all the units, all the lessons put together, the whole course and pace of it. So.
And it'll be in our show notes as well.
It'll be in our show notes, and I'll try to throw that into our event page for this. Speaking of our event page, fellow Kentuckian Donnie Piercy wants to know your favorite Rogue Squadron pilot.
Rogue Squadron pilot? That's so deep! Wow.
From the movie.
Donnie. Okay, well, I was going to say, a lot of the expanded universe author books, that's not something that I have as much knowledge about. But I will tell you that I know Wedge Antilles was kind of a thing where I would love to see that movie just about Wedge. Like, he shows up in every movie. He's loyal. He's faithful. He's the only guy that survives the explosion of the original Death Star besides Han and Luke. So to me, he was always an interesting character. Maybe he's too the easy obvious go-to choice, but I'm going to go with that.
Well,
yeah,
that was a good choice.
Can we have a side spin-off?
Yes, there you go.
Please, that would be super fun.
Who knows who may appear in there? But you scored points with Donnie with that one because he said #Wedge or nothing. But so you passed Donnie's test.
Good. Now here's a fun fact, by the way, guys. The original actor who played Wedge Antilles, do you know, is the uncle. He's the uncle of Ian McGregor. Isn't that weird?
Get out.
Yeah.
Hand to God.
No wonder I feel a little fangirly around both of them.
Well, there you go. Now the truth is out.
And then it's Lando and Wedge who blow up the Death Star in Episode 6.
There you go.
He's
got to be around when things blow up.
Very out-nerded right now.
I am lucky enough, and I have seen them far too many times. What is this, my 21st year of teaching, so 20-odd years, I have been teaching Star Wars in the classroom because I teach a film studies class. And so 1977, which I bought a shirt from Walmart this week, wore it on Friday for Casual Friday, and one of the kids asked me, what does 77 stand for? I said, get out of my classroom.
F for you. F for you, yes.
Stuff just
so sad.
And I've been using it probably how everybody else has too, but in sort of in unpacking the hero's journey a la Joseph Campbell.
That was such an integral part of it. Over the summer, I listened to, this is how nerdy I am, and far too deep. There's a book, and I'll have to look up the title, but it was an Audible book. It was 20 hours on the Star Wars and the creation and the legacy, and included the sale and all of that. 20 hours. So if you want to go in deep, I will put the book on there, and that will provide you all the interesting Star Wars knowledge that you need to know.
Excellent. Well, I would say
I,
too. I said, I taught drama and I taught high school English was my main class. One of the classes I was able to teach the last several years, though, I was in the classroom, was Myth and Legends, and I love that class. That was such a great class because I'm a big, and probably because of Star Wars, there's no denying that. But I'm a huge Joseph Campbell fan. Um, I love Greek myth. I love mythology in general. So that was for a while my Star Wars fix in an academic sense. Be able to teach students, that was an easy, obvious thing because yes, the hero's journey and all those things, it was just a natural fit. Obviously, and I don't need to add to that discussion because it's been done into the ground. But Star Wars is kind of the modern mythology for us, and it's so funny how many students who, frankly, have never even watched a Star Wars movie, but they know what the Force is, they know what a Jedi is, they can see Darth Vader and he's an icon, they go, he's that bad guy at least. So to use those tropes and talk, to quickly shortcut to say, and this guy is kind of like a Darth Vader figure because that's a great easy win, as a teacher, and of course for me personally, it was great as a person that loves Star Wars anyway to find any way that it felt natural. There were times where probably I forced it a little bit too much, but most of the time it was a natural fit. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it offers so much because it is so much of who we are in the pop culture world because it is just everywhere. And, we have all these pictures of all these people. We don't know who they are, but they're out there. I mean, the kids are already dressing up like Kylo Ren, and we know that he's maybe a bad guy. And
right.
and did you guys see the YouTube video of I think it was in a fencing competition. Have you seen this? And the kids went out with lightsabers and they have this awesome fight choreography. This
Wow.
awesome battle. Have you seen it? I'm hunting.
No.
Okay, you guys talk amongst yourselves. I'm gonna find it.
well, I mean, if people are looking to tap into the Star Wars world on a different front, I've watched a couple of different documentaries. The 501st Legion, if you like to dress up like a stormtrooper or other people in the canon, there are places and they do such good work and helping charities all over the world. It's definitely something that if you want to be a stormtrooper, if you want to be Darth Vader, if you want to be, because the kids get so excited. I've taken my son to a couple of different events. We were up in Wisconsin one time. They were at the library. He was so excited. We had to get pictures with everyone.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Of course, also talking about becoming experts. My son's 9. We went trick-or-treating yesterday, and there was a Darth Vader going around, but he had a Kylo Ren lightsaber, and he's like, that's not the right lightsaber.
That's so funny.
And his father and mother, they're like, yes, I know. His mom picked up the lightsaber. Sorry.
That mother. What does she know? Come on.
Yeah.
I have a nephew who's the same age as my youngest daughter, and he dressed up as Darth Vader this year. It's a strange evolution, though, because when of course, again, Star Wars, arm on the sleeve. I talked about Star Wars and Star Wars references and had Star Wars stuff and all that stuff since the kid was opening his eyes. And the funny thing about my nephew is that he was really fearful of Darth Vader. He was scary, right? Well, flash forward, 4 years. And now he dresses up for him as Halloween, but he had almost the exact same experience. His mom was going to give him a blue lightsaber, and he recognized, he goes, Darth Vader doesn't have a blue, he has a red lightsaber. They know. Man, you can't fake that stuff. There's authenticity in that stuff.
I picked green for my lower third, because you had blue for, his Anakin's lightsaber. I picked green for the one that Luke made.
See, Danielle, how does your color symbolize something? Come on.
Don't say Anakin to me. As a theater teacher, and I realize this might be a pretty obvious attempt at segue, but whatever. As a theater teacher, watching that acting was one of the most painful experiences I have ever seen.
Well,
Somebody told that poor kid all he had to do was glare through his eyebrows as he talked, and that would be acting. So my deep, deep, deep hope is that
and
this one will be different.
well, here I'm going to get on my soapbox here because I tell this every year to my students. Well, George Lucas is a visionary.
He's good with pixels, not people.
But as a director, working with actors, he's not good at it.
Pixels, not people. I'm telling you.
I respect him. I appreciate his work on Utopia.
Oh.
The man is a genius, but faster, more intense does not help actors.
Right. I was gonna say.
Scream through your eyebrows. He just lucked out. Well, he must have lucked out with
and the kids ask me, can we watch episode 1, 2, and 3 in class? It's a whole big chunk of time. We normally get through 4, 5, and 6. I'm like, no, here's what we will watch. We will watch the pod race. We will watch Yoda's fight in the second one, and the last 10 minutes of the third one. Natalie Portman, Academy Award-winning actress. All she does in the third one is pout and cry. What a waste.
I understand. Well, let me get a little theater on you guys, because here's the thing that I think we can talk about the acting and the reliance over special effects, but I'm going to go on a real basic level that I think, because I'm brilliant, because you're having me as a guest, I must be brilliant about this, or you wouldn't have me on. Let me go in,
humble too.
Humble,
the most
obviously.
Humble person.
The most that you've ever had. To me, the most fundamental flaw about the episodes 1, 2, and 3 is the dramatic inertness of the fact that you kind of know what's going to happen, and that could be a great, incredible challenge. I mean, listen, let's use Shakespeare as a reference. There was 2, maybe 3 plays that he did that were considered original stories. Midsummer Night's Dream, one of my favorites, but that was by far the exception. Otherwise, it was history or it was a remake. It was a reboot.
And to yes and you a little bit, for most of the plays, there's some sort of prologue at the beginning that says, here is what's going to happen.
Right. These 2 lovers are going to die.
Yeah.
Get used to it.
Those guys over there fight, die, terrible, and their families are going to make up. Now watch the play.
Now watch the play that I just wrote for 2 hours. Hope your Broadway money wasn't scalped tickets. But here's the thing with the three prequels. The problem is that you have a situation where you know where it's going to end up, and a very brilliant author can take a situation that's a myth or a history or whatever and do something so profound and different with it that you're in there the whole time. You almost forget, oh my gosh, that's right, that's how it ends. That's really hard. To use an analogy, I don't think that when Sophocles was walking around Greece, and they were like, oh, the Oedipus Rex trilogy is so fantastic. Listen, this is what you need to do. Can you just show Oedipus when he was 8? Because that's a fascinating story. Can we just start there and all the things, and everyone's going to go, oh, that's when he does. Oh, see, later on he's going to. Can't do that. It's very, very, very hard to do that and make that exciting. So, to me, that is why episodes 7, 8, and 9, which I never thought from my childhood to certainly now, that's what's exciting because I really have no idea. I have no idea, and that's the most exciting part. I can almost forgive so many else because at least I don't know where the twists and turns are going to be. No matter what, you knew that Darth Vader was going to put on the helmet, But for this, I don't know. Luke could be bad. Han could blow up in the Millennium Falcon in the first 15 minutes. I don't know. I really have no idea, and that's
not funny.
Well,
that is not funny. Shut your mouth.
Okay. If you get into deep analysis, Daisy, or I forget,
Ridley?
I think the actress, Daisy's holding some sort of furry character. Does Chewbacca die?
That would shatter my inner.
I know. Watching the first trailer, when Han said "We're home," a little tear came to my eye.
Of course it did.
Well, I want to dial back to what you said, and you can write a really strong and exciting script. When everybody knows what's going to happen, but what you have to realize is that what your audience is, it's just extended dramatic irony, right? Dramatic irony being when the audience knows more than the characters know. But the tension that you play with there is, how is it going to happen? And you should have tons of teasers. If this is what's going to make him evil. Nope, that wasn't it. This is what's going to make him. Nope, this isn't it. Oh, this is what's going to turn him to the dark side. Nope, that wasn't it. But instead, we had this dude who was clearly a jerk from the beginning. It was could we not have seen that? We should have shot that kid in the head early. Yeah. If he had, what you want to do is make him the sweetest thing ever, the most charming, sweet thing.
Right.
Instead, we had this jerk of a kid. I would use stronger language if we weren't on air.
Yes.
And that's something in theater and acting we're constantly trying, or I'm constantly trying to drive into my students is, don't play the ending at the beginning. Mm-hmm. In fact, you want to play the very opposite at the beginning. If your character is going to fall in love with that guy, you better be playing like you hate love and you hate that guy at the beginning to make it an arc, a transformative arc. There was no transformative arc. He was just like a mustache twirling villain from the beginning who needed slapping and never got it. He got jar-jarred instead, which is equal. Don't even go. Don't even go. That's just too easy. That's low-hanging fruit.
That's a good point.
I have some opinions.
Indeed. That's and you're a co-host. You are allowed. You are allowed.
I am. That's all Nick wants me for. My yammering co-host.
Yes.
Well, tell us about you. You have a very active resume in the theater world as well, including some playwriting, which probably you're nodding inside about that idea of the arc of transformation. I'm sure it happens in your plays too. So tell us what you've got going on in that area.
Well, thank you. As far as in theater on the creative side of it, let's see. When I was 21, there was a little ad. This is where it started, because it was interesting. In high school, I was not the theater kid. I didn't try out for crew. I didn't go on stage. I loved movies. I've loved that since young age. But in terms of the theater, it always seemed like remote or something that maybe I couldn't do or didn't click with me. But I always loved to write. As a writing thing, I've written poetry and short fiction and essays and things like that for a long time. In terms of theater, I was 21 and I saw a little ad about a local great theater called Bunbury Theater in Louisville, Kentucky, who was running an 10th anniversary play festival looking for a 10-minute play submission. And I thought, 10 minutes, that's about 10 pages, right? 10 pages of script. I think I could do that. So I wrote this play called The Bird Bath, and if nothing else, it was a creative exercise, sent it in, and it got accepted along with a few others to do the festival. And to me, it was an affirmation that to this day I still go back and love Jürgen Tossmann, who's the playwriting director there in the Bunbury Theater, because it was just an affirmation of something I did was worth not just reading, which is pretty much a thrill. If anyone reads something of yours, you're like, whoa, that's cool, but then it ends, and they hand it back to you. To think that somebody said, I believe in this, and think about the power of theater. I believe in this enough that I'm going to buy a few prop pieces, right? These two actors are going to rehearse these lines for like maybe a few weeks. I'm going to put lights on it, and people are going to be charged admission to come in and see it. That was spellbinding to me. So that was definitely my first entrance into that. And since then, I've had the pleasure and opportunity to do a few different things. I've written a few more plays, some longer and some shorter. Several years ago, I put together a book called Frighten the Horses. It was a long play and two short ones, including The Bird Bath that I just mentioned. It's still out there on Amazon Land. I got involved with a public radio station in town, and again, on a whim, never done it. I just thought, hey, was always a fan of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and now we're mixing genres. I know we're going from Star Wars to Rocky Horror. This podcast may never survive.
I'm going to guess most people have feet in both of those pools.
That's probably fair.
Mm-hmm.
The Rocky Horror Picture Show, I approached by email. I approached the creative director of WFPK, a public radio station, and said, hey, I'd like to do this, but as a radio drama with like a live band and all that. What do you think? And he was like, okay. And I said, no, listen, I understand. I've never, at that point, I'd never directed a play except for writing Bird Bath. There wasn't a lot of credentials in that area. So it was like, I get it if you kind of want to take this idea and run. He says, who better than you? You thought of the idea, go with it. And again, another little moment of confidence and giving me that. Dan Reed, I don't know if I said his name earlier, but Dan Reed from WFPK said do it. And so it was an incredibly stressful, horrible, wonderful thing, and in the end it pulled off, and these amateur volunteers came together, and we got the band and live music, and it was fantastic. A year later, I did a radio drama that was set in a local sanatorium that's really famous around here called Waverly Hills. Anyway, I've done these are just variances as far as different things I've done. The most recent thing I probably did that was really theater. Bunbury Theater had another festival about Abraham Lincoln, about the bicentennial of his birth, and I wrote something called Occasional Poisonings in the Kitchen, which again is out there on YouTube land. The parts of it are recorded and uploaded there. And again, it was just a fantastic opportunity. Occasional Poisoning in the Kitchen was an idea of what if Abraham Lincoln and James Garfield in limbo, their whole job was to welcome incoming dead presidents, and that's where they're stuck. They never get to proceed. They never see what's on the other side of the golden, the beautiful white pearly gates. It's just basically we're stuck here welcoming the people to come through, and for some unknown reason, that's their purgatory. So
I love President Garfield's inferiority complex. In the clip that I saw where he's like, well, you were assassinated, Lincoln says, you were assassinated too, and he says something like, second.
Yes, I was the same, right. He can't even claim that. He wasn't the first president assassinated, right. And he says something, and again, we're throwing in more genres, but I think he says something in the play about, he says, he talks about the fact that, you Lincoln, you have a car named after you, you have some guy in a television show, that Captain Kirk guy got to, starred with you in an episode. No one puts James Garfield in a Star Trek episode, So anyway, it's it was a fun play, and it was again another fun experience. It's something that it's something I'll always keep saying, and I keep meaning to. It's something I need to make more time for and come back to because I love theater. I certainly love writing creatively. It's a very, again, going back full circle, coming to the end here, what I said earlier. The thrill of writing something and knowing that a group of people come together and they act it and rehearse it and audition it, if for a short time, it's the most flattering thing you can creatively do for someone. It is an incredible gift to be able to sit there as a writer and see those words come alive. So it's
I think one of the most chilling moments I've ever had is listening to people laugh at my words.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I know that I meant to be funny.
Right. Oh, that hack. No, it's great. Yeah, to know that you have that power and to be able to connect with someone is pretty awesome. And that's probably one of the things I can see why a stand-up comedian can live or die with that thrill, that adrenaline rush of making that connection and all that stuff. And I definitely wouldn't consider myself an actor. I wouldn't bring myself to the pinnacle of that. I will say that for teaching, for staying in front of the classroom, we're now in more of a professional development role than standing in front of teachers and such. It is wonderful to have a similar thrill, that ability to connect with people and say, I have something to impart, I hope you, or let us explore this together, and I'm the facilitator of that. That's powerful too, and that's probably, ironically, if I stopped teaching in any capacity tomorrow, I'd probably have to run to the theater because that part of my brain would not be satisfied at all, and probably the only thing that keeps it kind of humble and calm and a little bit in a hibernated state is that I do get a chance to explore and feed that in other ways. So with my educational career.
So it sounds like you've made a really nice relationship with Bunbury, a local theater company there in Louisville. I'm thinking that my students who are playwrights and teachers who are helping to shepherd young playwrights into being active parts of their theater communities would be interested in hearing how you did that. It sounds like it started with that first Adam Watson, powered by whim, your whimsical dive into whim-powered. I like it.
Now that's my next shirt. Powered by whim. That was great.
You gotta hit that H though. Powered by whim. Yes. But that it started there, but it sounds like you were able to cultivate a further relationship with them. And how did you bring that about? And did you guys workshop your play at all? before plays at all before putting them up?
That's a great question.
That's what I'm here for, Adam. That's what I'm here for.
You are a sage. You're a sage here. Well, let me answer it this way. I probably, when I first wrote probably any of the plays, skits, whatever things that I've done, it probably started pretty individually at a quiet moment by myself. And depending on the situation of the production, what happened from there. I will say this, and this is where the word of advice, I guess, part comes in, which is, I think for someone that loves theater, for someone that loves drama, whatever aspect, whether you're an actor, or writer, or director, you have to do two things. You have to make sure that you cultivate relationships. And I hate to say networking because that can sound kind of trite as far as a word. But I think the reality is that the more you talk and hang out and speak and find like-minded people that love what you do, you find opportunities where out of those relationships grow opportunities. With Bunbury, Jorgen Tossman, of course, didn't know me when I submitted at 21 years old, submitted that Birdbath play. Who was I? I kept in touch with them, saw a few plays here and there, always was willing to help out if there was a capacity to do so, kind of thing, kind of putting that out there. And so when this Honest Abe festival came around, I was, he was like, hey, Adam, it's been a while. Would you like to submit something? So that relationship. The second thing I'd probably say, as far as the piece of advice, is just to be open to experiences. You just never know, when that next festival submission, that audition opportunity, you might think, oh, it's a small part in a small regional theater or a small thing in a high school thing, or I've never acted before. Who am I to act? But you're a junior in high school, and you haven't done it before. Take that chance and take that leap, because when you do, you just never know when you might say, that was it. This is it for me. This is something that I realized, I'd never realized. It's been sitting dormant all these years, but I suddenly have a passion for it. So that's probably the advice part of what I would say. And it is great, and one last thing, as far as the workshop idea, if you have a group of friends, a group of other actors, and you're like, hey, I just wrote something, and I've got a bottle of liquid that you can come over here and experience with me. You can come over here and let's sit around and read. I mean, makes a great evening. That's a great evening of fun and circle. If a friend throws a barb or makes a suggestion, you could take from it and be positive and grow from it. And it's probably a little less scary than sending a cold script to a agent or a director or something like that. So there you go.
Hearing your words out loud is really vital to your editing process.
Yes, absolutely. How many times I must have written something, and that's so true of theater. There's never a script that survives the first reading, really, because you hear it and you think, that's a phrase, or that's something that doesn't quite sound right, or frankly, the more you hear it and the character and the actor starts falling into that role and start breathing it, you realize that's not consistent with what he said before. All those things happen, and that's, again, the beauty of theater. I mean, because it's not just you. No matter what you might be, no matter how vital you may be, the script, what would they do without your words kind of thing. You can't really hold too much ego to that, because when the director comes in and the actors come in and the lighting person comes in and the costumes come in and the janitor who's been watching this thing from the beginning, who can give you probably the best authentic advice right there, waiting in the wings. Like, I've watched this from the beginning. I got to tell you something, actory doesn't work. You got to be open to all those things, and that's what makes theater an incredible creative art, because it's open to that blend. And when it works, so anyway.
And it gives and that also gives such great metaphorical connections to anything, really, is that ability to take a note without ego.
Right.
And to hear what someone is saying without the defenses going up. You might not end up agreeing with what they said or listening to it, but yeah, if your facilities management crew comes in and says, I can't understand a word that guy is saying, well, you've known what they're saying because you wrote the words or you've listened to the words 100 times, but it's important to hear that someone didn't know what they were saying.
Right. Yeah, or who may have only heard it once. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an important skill that we, as teachers, we can use too, is to
Yes.
hear that feedback. I mean, we were talking, I think, before we went on air about, or maybe it was after we were on air about teenagers having that sort of mandate to roll their eyes at least once at you per day.
Right.
But
Right.
sometimes we need to watch that and say, okay, yeah, that was an inauthentic moment, or that's not getting through to them, and take the note.
Take the note. That's great advice. That's true. That's absolutely true. I will say that too. Yeah, when it comes to like a classroom and a teacher environment, um, you know, again, in a perfect world, I'd be the first to say as a teacher that you should facilitate the knowledge and not be the dispenser. That said, in that collaborative space and experience that you have with a set of students, um, you've got to be open to that feedback and realize that, like I just said about a writer, you may come in with the best lesson plan in the world and it worked. Hey, this worked great in Hoboken, or whatever. Why is it not playing with you guys? But no, you bring that lesson plan, you realize this isn't working here, and be open to the fact of what can I do to adapt to make that work with this set of audience members, i.e. students. So again, the idea of theater and education, it's such an easy hybrid to make, even if you're not teaching theater education.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Well, I find one in the classroom and also when I go out to presenting at summits, it's like when I get up there, it's like I'm on stage. And
Right.
okay, what happened that hour? I kind of remember, but it's that adrenaline rush that you get when you present. A little bit more comfortable in the classroom with it than at a summit, but it's just one of those things where how's this audience group going to react? Because there are sessions that I've done before, and sometimes you can, where does this go with this group? Which reminds me very much of theater and
Mm-hmm.
and that type of experience. So it's very interesting how much crossover there is in our lives.
There is indeed, and and more power. Again, you all having this webcast and this podcast is proof of that right there. But it is something that I think that theater and education, theater in schools, is something that I've been very thankful and glad to see in all the schools I've been at, in all the high schools that I still see in my district, how important that is, how excited the students still get about putting on productions. That serves a valid and validating role in a sense of the curriculum, everything else, arts in general, of course, but my bias is a little bit to theater, of course. But the point is that it really does serve a purpose there, and it's that kinesthetic ability to reach people that might not otherwise be reached. So.
Too true. Experiential learning is hard to find in a classroom, but you can't help but do it if you're up on
Hmm.
your feet and acting in silly hats.
Yeah, I do like
Absolutely.
that part about our job. And we are the 21st century learners who've been doing it for a long, 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 long time.
Right. Before multiple intelligences was the key buzzword and all that stuff, theater was doing it all along. So there you go.
Yes, theater teachers everywhere yawn, a collective yawn.
Right.
But then the irony is we are all so separated. There's
Hmm.
and it's one of the reasons I applaud Nick's uh, eureka epiphany to have this podcast. It happens in every summit I go to. There will be one or two people who are theater teachers or who say, my theater teacher needs this. And we're all so lonely in our
Hmm.
buildings.
I know.
Um,
I totally. It's about one person a summit. I met someone was at the Tulsa EdTech Team Summit, and one person was a theater teacher, and I at this point sometimes I forget even to. I always mention what I do, but I don't ask, are there other ones out there? And I should do that more because
our,
Right.
our tribe.
our tribe, because
Well, yeah.
I think it provides we we provide a very interesting skill to the educational world, and I know I've said this before, but you know in between doing a show and that week in between, connect with our other teachers, share some advice, pull some information from them, because we can't always just be hiding doing a show. We have to get out there. We have to advocate and we have to share our knowledge because, that math teacher may need a way to get them up on their feet with the math, And
Hmm.
sometimes, talking Star Wars in the classroom, if you count the number of TIE fighters versus the number of X-Wings, that might be that special click. It's for it to, oh, now you're talking my language. I can do math with Star Wars all day.
Right,
And
right. No, you're right.
and
You're right.
and it could be just that simple to pull them in, and it's just kind of one of those funny, strange, weird things. But I know I keep on saying and I keep on pushing out there, and I know it's hard too, because I can tell you doing all of that and pushing out there, it takes work, and you just have to be committed to it. But your students and the world of education will be better for it.
Very true. And I would also
That's
say,
all. Just save the world.
let's
That's
save the
all.
world. No, no big deal. I will say, I will, I will say, as far as ed tech coach, a huge part of my job. Um, it's very similar to like being a theater teacher in the sense that, well, I mean, perfect, I mean, like one per building would probably be a luxury, right? So it may just be a handful or a team per district in a typical district, and there's some districts that don't have any at all. I mean, one reason I came to Shelby County was the blessing of being able to come as a ed tech coach. It was a role and opportunity that I hadn't had previously, and I was very excited about that. But once again, you come together in a summit where there's an opportunity. It's like, oh my gosh, you're an ed tech coach too. It's not something that you necessarily, you can't have a PLC around that very easily within your own district very often. So we're learning coaches along and a director of innovation as well, but that's an exception probably rather than the rule. So
And
it can be lonely.
you just brought up an interesting topic. So on ed tech thing, because Lord knows Danielle and I are a little bit geeky. Danielle's blog is called Edu Nerd,
There you go.
and mine's called Ed Tech for Theater. So, what are some tech tips that you find useful, that you share, that's your go-to thing when you are working with teachers, or your favorite tools that we can impart to our educators who are listening?
Thank you for asking. I'll give you one or two. The big one that I always like to pull out of the toolbox is Nearpod. Um, Nearpod is one of my favorite, and the reason why is that I ask teachers, the teacher that's sitting there in front of me, like, I don't know ed tech, and I'm like, okay, have you ever made a PowerPoint? And that's if they ever, I've never had no yet, but it may happen one of these days. But they always say, yes, I made a PowerPoint. Okay, if you've made a PowerPoint, go to nearpod.com, create a free account. All you have to do is upload that PowerPoint, throw in a quiz or a draw it function or a poll question, and then you've got a Nearpod. Well, what you can do with that is that you can steer and push that out to the students. The interaction you get with them, the question answers, it'll stay with you. You can run a report, so you're getting formative feedback. It's a great tool that is super, super easy. It works as described, and it's free. You get a little bit more whiz bang for the buck if you pay, but for the free version, you get a lot. So Nearpod's definitely one of my favorite. Nearpod. The only other one I can think of probably offhand that I have to say that's probably changed things recently is definitely Google Apps for Education. Our district got it in the spring. We've expanded to teachers and now starting to roll it out to students. And man, it's just a different world. It's just a different world to have a student create a Google Doc that's saved in the cloud. And I'm just going to stop there because here's the thing: as a teacher, as an English teacher, that drove me nuts, Nick and Danielle. How many times I had to deal with the fact of the kid that came in and said, I don't have email, and my printer ate my computer, and then there was a power outage, and so kind of there's no reason I couldn't bring my essay. But see, when you have everything living in the cloud, it's just right there. It's like, hey, log in, got it, share it, done. If that's all that Google did
Mm-hmm.
they'd win my accolades.
Yeah,
Thank you,
it's a
Google
game
Cloud. Thank
changer.
you,
It
Google
is a
Drive.
game changer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm right now. It's November 1st, which means to all of the middle schoolers at my school, the Village Academy Schools in Powell, Ohio, it means that it is NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. And for the first time ever at our school, every single middle schooler has pledged to participate. So every single middle schooler at our school is going to write a novel in the month of November. And I've been doing this for years, since 2008 with my 8th graders. It's just recent that our 6th and 7th grade teachers have gotten on board. This is the first year 7th grade has joined us. It used to be 6th and 8th. And before we were a Google Apps for Education school, it was somewhat nightmarish to get emails from all my students with their files and different drafts we had to have every week to do the word count. And now I have Google Classroom. I shared a blank document with every kiddo. And today I was able to hop on Google Classroom and just look and see who'd begun writing and send them personal messages saying, yeah, you're doing it. Look at you. You've already started. You're on the road. You're a novelist already.
Oh, awesome.
And
That's
being
awesome.
able to do that with them. And if you guys out there want to help support my Nano Ninjas, we'll include in the show notes a couple ways you can do it. One is a form. I would love people, Google form, a whole other rabbit hole to go down, where you can tell them advice for writing and for the month of November to keep motivated. And we're also collecting the ages of the people who are giving the advice and where on the planet they are from, and we're going to connect that with the Google Map and be able to see where all these people are who responded to us, because we're Google Apps for Education School. It's really fun. And if you want to tweet, if you want to follow or tag any tweets to them, just hashtag, if you will, Nano Ninjas, NaNoNinjas, to give them some words of encouragement, because a lot of them are pretty nervous about this endeavor that they've been dragged into.
Exciting.
It is super exciting. And I wrote 4,000 words, because I do this too, and I do the adult version, which is 50,000 words in a month. And I open my Google Doc so they can go in and see me writing my terrible novel that I do every year.
Oh, exciting.
So they can follow along, and I see their little icons pop up and watch me while I'm writing too. So super fun.
Does that when you see the little icons of, anonymous giraffe, anonymous llama, does that make you feel like, does that freeze you up, or does that make you go, yeah, I got to write because I have an audience now? That's a
kind of both. Like I tend to make a lot more typos when they're watching. Like I'm like, nah, I just hit caps lock for some reason. But inside it's because I'm really jazzed and excited that my kiddos care and that they can see that I'm doing it right there along with them. It's really fun, and you couldn't do that at all without Google Apps. You just couldn't do it. That doesn't even translate. So when people say, "Oh, it's just a fancy encyclopedia or fancy piece of paper, fancy word processing program," no, it's a whole other level of learning engagement that you couldn't get otherwise. So thank you, Google gods.
Thank you to Google gods. Yes.
Okay, Adam, if people wanted to find out more about you, what are some of the ways they can do that? We, of course, will include information in show notes, but if you could share your Twitter handle.
Absolutely. Down here at the bottom, and if you're just listening to us and not watching us on a podcast, shame on you, first of all, because we're very beautiful people. You should be looking at us. But if you're only listening at home or at work, it's at Watson EdTech is my Twitter handle. I also write a blog that I contribute to at least 3 times a month, and that is watsonedtech.blogspot.com. The last 2 things I'll plug here is as I mentioned earlier, if you want to get to my Star Wars Shakespeare academic unit, so you can see that, including a pacing guide. It's got core content standards, the whole 9 yards. That's bit.ly/rogue1. That's spelled out ROGUEONE. And last but not least, if you want to look at my district webpage, it has a collection of different resources for EdTech and some of my social media accounts and so on. you can go there, and the shortcut for that is tinyurl.com/Watson's World, WATSONSWORLD. Have at it. I would love to hear from you and see you on Twitter and out there in the Twitterverse, blogosphere, and all that good stuff. So and thank you guys so much for having me on. This has been really a blast.
Thank
It's
you
been
for
really
joining
exciting.
us. And
Thanks.
Danielle, how can people find you on the internet web?
You can tweet me at Ms. Filas, MSFILAS, and you can go to my blog, edunerdhq.org, and there's all kinds of jazz on there that you can find me in other places. I am Borg. I'm everywhere. How about you, Big Nick? How do we find you and cyberstalk you?
First of all, I want to give a shout out to Donnie Pierce again, and he has offered us another wormhole to go down in the Star Wars universe, though I don't know if it would be an official lexicon. And he's shared a website called DarthJarJar.com, and that Jar Jar is a Dark Lord of the Sith. Take what you may of that.
Explains so much. I get it now.
It all makes sense.
I think that says so much about Mr. Piercy.
I think Danielle also has a website called glaringeyebrows.com. I think that's the one you like.
Well, my quantum theory of internet says that as soon as we say it, it exists. So
someone's hosting it as we speak. You're right.
Oh my God, Darth Jar Jar is my new favorite thing, Donnie Piercy.
You can find me on the internet at tech4theater.com or on Twitter at the @edtech4 theater spelled correctly. And of course, always at TheatreCast.org. We appreciate you joining us and look to see you in the near future. Thanks again, and thank you again, Adam, for joining us. It was a great time.
It's been a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much.
Adam. Thank you.
Bye.